Hey there, everyone. Oh, sorry. I'm already off to a bad start. So, today's stream, we're going to be going over Photoshop basics. And the reason why I like Photoshop over anything else is because the features that it has. I know there are other alternatives, especially free ones, like, Silhouette Studio and all those other ones. And then you have, like, another paid one, which is Affinity Photo, which are good programs, but I've been using Photoshop for almost 20 years, and I just think that the features that it brings to the table still outweigh it better than anyone. There is a downside where it does cost, about $10 a month. So it is a subscription model. You can't buy it outright. You can find old versions, but I don't really recommend it. And the version I'm going to be using is to be the one that is the subscription cost, which right now is Photoshop 2020. So, first of all, we got to learn how to where to get it and which package to get because the website makes it so confusing on which one to get. So we're going to do that one first. So if you go to adobe.com, you'll come in here and you'll see creativity and design. Now you can go over here and go to Photoshop, and then if you can click on buy now. And Photoshop is $21 a month. I don't suggest going that way. I don't know why they do it that way. What I suggest is this plan right here, and I know it says $20 a month. However, let's go back over here and we go to creativity and design and we go to the photographers. And here we have that package, and we click on the 10 and the 20 gigabyte, and this is just cloud storage. This is not like you could only edit up to 20 gigabytes of photos or anything like that. No, that's just the cloud storage, which honestly there are much better alternatives out there for cloud storage. So don't worry about that. Get the lowest amount, 20 gigabytes. And then that'll be $9.99. However, if you've never downloaded it before, there is a free trial of Photoshop, which is I think it used to be 7 days. So you have at least 7 days to get familiar with it, see if it's for you, and if it isn't, then don't get it, or uninstall it. I highly suggest, especially once you get bigger into sublimation, to get some kind of actual photo editor of some sort, whether it is Photoshop or Affinity. And the reason is because you're going to have better colors overall. You're going to have better quality. The scaling algorithms are much better versus anything else. So you'll go through it, you'll download it, and do all this other stuff, and then you're gonna. So I'm on a Mac, so everything I'm doing on a Mac is gonna be pretty much the same for Windows. It's almost same for same, except for if I say, Command C, which is copy, it'll be Control C on Windows. But almost everything is the exact same. So once you do that, you're gonna end up installing something called the Adobe Creative Cloud. And oops, there we go. It'll be the Creative Cloud, and that'll be the first thing you download. It'll tell you that's the first thing to download. Once you do that, here's the Photoshop, and then mine's already installed, obviously, but over here it'll be installed. So it'll be like down in here. It'll look exactly like this, install. Okay, and if it doesn't say install, then you're either not logged into the right account, or you didn't actually buy the thing. So anyways, so you got Photoshop, and then open or install. Once it's done installing, then you can open it. So I'm gonna minimize this, and we will jump straight into Photoshop. All right, so when you first open Photoshop, that's exactly, oops, sorry, pressed the wrong button. Let me see something here. What is this going on here? Sorry. All right, let's try that again. Photoshop. For some reason. All right, there we go. All right, so when you first open it up, it's going to look something like this. And then the only thing you're going to do is you're going to click New File. And then this new document's going to pop up. Now, what I suggest for anybody, especially when you get into these higher end photo editing suites, is to actually create your own document based on what you're going to print on. So if you're going to print on 8.5 by 11, then create an 8.5 by 11 image. And the reason I say that is because then you are in complete control of your layout and exactly how you want it to happen. And it's a lot less likely that you're going to have sizing problems versus if you just send a graphic through Print Manager like you would through Creative Studio or anything else like that. So if you're going to be doing an 8.5 by 14 or a legal size, and do that. Tabloid 13 by 19, all those things, I would do it as the paper size and not what the graphic size is going to be. Okay, so we'll go along down here, and you can give your project here a title if you want to. I don't usually bother with that. Resolution, very important that it is 300 at least, because that is the average resolution for printing. If you really wanted to go really high, you can go 1200, because the 500s and the 1000s can support that high. But most of the time, you'll be fine with just 300. Now, here's the thing that gets most people caught up, is this RGB color. We have CYMK printers, and so everybody wants to go to the CYMK. That is a giant no-no. And the reason being is that CYMK, there is no standard. Meaning that, like, you know, if you go to a paint shop and you pick up a palette or a color palette from two different companies, their yellow could be different from another company's yellow. And so there is no, you know, you can't translate yellow across these other things. However, there is a standard in RGB, and that is what this sRGB IEC is. It is an international standard that a lot of people did a lot of research coming up with this international standard. And the reason you want that is because, yes, we can look at something and see that it's yellow. However, printers, computers don't really see it that way. All they see is numbers and letters. So if you told somebody, just imagine if you sat down a whole bunch of people with just CYMK, and then you told them to make a cyan circle. Well, of course, they're only just going to use the cyan and just make that circle, and everybody's will be the same. Now, what's going to be different is if you tell everybody to make an orange circle, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of different shades of orange. But if somebody had that palette in front of them that told them exactly how to make the orange that you're looking for, then everybody's orange is going to be the same. And that's what we're looking for. And that's why we do it. And I know there's a lot of confusion behind that. So here we are, the sRGB. Make sure that we're in that, and everything else can be the same. Then we hit our create button. And then here we go. This is in this is our canvas. In some instances, it's also called an artboard when you start getting into digital design, but it's pretty much the same thing. All right. So let me just do this. Yep, I'm in the essentials. So if we go around the room per se, here we have, this is our toolbar right here. And this is all the stuff where, you know, our eraser, our paintbrush, our text thing, it's all right here. Along the top here, this is our control for whatever that whatever we're using. So if I use the paintbrush, then everything up here will change for a paintbrush. If I go to my text tool, then it'll, you know, do my text stuff. So this will change depending on whatever tool that you're using. Over here, okay, so normally when you get up here, you have your color and your patterns. I have a navigator up on here. So if you're seeing anything on here that I have that you don't see on yours, the simple thing to do is go to Window, and you can see all these different little things up here. And the one thing I have is a navigator, so you probably didn't see it up on there. But on mine, I do. And it just lets me, it's just much easier for me. Instead of using these scrolls right here, I can just use this and move around like that. So once I can move around like that. Anyways, properties, this changes based on what you're editing as well. So right now the only thing that I'm editing, and I didn't mean to do that, is this canvas. So it's just literally telling me the dimensions of the canvas. If I wanted to right now, I could change it. I could change this to 14, and it'll make it at 14. And I can change this back to 11, but what you'll see what happens when you change it to a smaller number, it's going to say it's smaller. There might be some clipping, meaning that, you know, it might cut off some things, whatever. All right. And then you have all these other things, your fill, you know, if you wanted, you know, the transparent background, you could select that. If you want white, that's what I just do, because white on our printers is transparent anyways. So that is that. So now that we've got this up here, obviously we want something to edit or bring in so that we can print it off. So the easiest thing to do is just to take whatever image. So there's two ways of doing this. The way that I do it is I kind of just move this down to a place where so I have my image on my desktop or wherever it is. And I can drag it and I drop it in there. And then as soon as I bring it in, the first thing it does is that it gives me a chance to resize this thing. So I can move it. I can move it around and do whatever I want. And you can see this is not a locked aspect. Locked means that both, if I move one, it's going to move the other proportionally. I'll just hit Control Z for undo, and it'll bring it back to what it was before. If you look at the top here, there's our X and our Y axis, height and width, you know, width and height, whatever. And this little thing right here is this little chain, and you can click on that, and now the aspect is locked. So no matter what I try to do, it'll proportionally change the height and the width at the same time. If I unclick it, I can now change it to whatever I want. So one other thing that I suggest you do, and I can click check. Now, if you notice one thing on mine, on this, on the top left-hand corner where I'm manipulating, my height and my width are in inches. If you just start out, it might be in pixels. Obviously, we don't live in the world of pixels. We live in the world of inches or centimeters, depending on where you live. And you can change that. If you go into, if you go into Photoshop, Preferences, Units and Rulers, yours were probably set to pixels. And you can even see right here where it changed. You can see my little ruler up here. It changed from to pixels. Change it to inches or centimeters, depending whichever unit that you want to use. And there you go. And then that way, when you actually see this, when you move it, you can actually see what size you're making it. Now, there is another way. And when you bring in images from the outside, so you bring it, drag it and drop it in, it is basically, I forget the term that they call it, but it is an unmanipulated image, meaning that this image exists how it is, and I cannot change it for anything. So if I try to take my paintbrush right now, and I'll get into how to get your paintbrush and all that, I cannot do anything to it because I cannot manipulate this because it is in its own pristine state. Now, if I wanted to edit this image in here, like I wanted to actually change some things around or whatever, I have to do something called rasterize it, which means that I'm basically going to make it I'm going to make the whole thing part of my actual image. I'm going to take it out of its protective shell so I can actually manipulate it. So the easiest thing to do is come over here. So this is your layers, and anything you bring in, just like if you're familiar with SVGs, you have layers. So anything that you drag in and all these other things, you have layers, and you can add layers down here with this little plus button right here. But since I dragged this in, I have my little layer right here. So if I right click it and I click on rasterize, which means that I now took off the protective coating, so now I can just manipulate it, and now I can draw all over this thing. What that also lets me do is that it lets me now use this transform tool, and now I can just simply type in 7, and it's going to do that. And there's the same thing if you see this little lock right here. So if I do that and I hit 7 with that where that clicked on, then there's that. Okay. Now, one other way to do these images, let's say that I got this image, and when I got it, it was really small like this, just this really tiny image, and I wanted to make it bigger. This is kind of one of the places that Photoshop excels at because it has so many ways of making a bigger image. One of these things is called content aware stretch. So I got this image from a customer. It's this really tiny thing, and I'm like, you're just like, well, if I make it, every time I make it bigger, it gets all blurry. It kind of looks like that, and you're just like, well, I can't use this. Well, what you can do, so let me get out of here. So if I click on that and I click on edit, there's this thing right here called content aware scale. And if I click on that, watch. So this will only get you so far, because what it's going to do is that every time I stretch it, it's going to look at every little aspect of this thing and look, well, I'm stretching out here, so maybe I can move the A over here and the X over here, and maybe I can, make the axolotl's face a little bit wider, but you'll see what I'm talking about. But you can only take it so far before it starts looking a little ridiculous. So I start stretching it, and you can kind of see how, let me do that again. If I hold down shift, that makes, that's another way of, linking the chain so that it doesn't go anywhere. So if I hold down shift, and so so once it gets to it, there's a certain point to where it starts looking a little bit ridiculous. This is not exactly the greatest image that I would use for content aware scale, but you can kind of play around with it. And then there's this thing right here where it's, if you have a person in the image and you don't really want it to manipulate the person and make it look ridiculous, you can click on this, and then that makes it aware of Photoshop. You can tell that it's a person and that you can stretch it out. But again, it can look, it can get a little bit ridiculous looking, but on some images it works really well. So you just kind of have to play around with it. Another one is just to simply So when I pull it out like this, it kind of looks pixelated, but Photoshop has all kinds of algorithms of taking something that is really small and making it look good. So so I do that, and as soon as I hit this plus, it's gonna re-render it, and it should look a lot better. And see, it looks a lot better. So there are multiple ways of being able to restore images inside Photoshop, which is one of the reasons why I use Photoshop. I've tried to do it in things like Affinity and other products, and it just doesn't work as well, especially on low quality images. It's so much easier for me to resize in Photoshop because they've just been doing it for so long. So there is that. And then if you're on, so we've got our image, we've got exactly how we wanted it. And so the next thing that we do is, if you're on a Windows PC, you'll just simply go to Print. Select Print Manager. And then Printer manages colors. And then you hit Print, and everything will be fine and dandy. Print Manager will pop up, and you just do normal things. The only thing that I suggest that you don't do is and I'll go into it once I get into the actual Print Manager, is because we've done our layout for us, we don't want Print Manager to then change the layout on top of that. So you have to make sure that it's preserve designer details. So since I'm on a Mac and I can't print directly to Print Manager, I have to do it the image way, which is the way I prefer. And even when I'm working on Windows, is the way I do it anyways. I use smart folders. So the easiest way for this is to go to File, Export, Quick Export as PNG. Then I go to my desktop. Oops. Also, if I spelled axolotl right. What? Yeah, close enough. All right. So I'm going to save that to my desktop. So I got my axolotl image, and then I'm going to drag it to my smart folder, which then Print Manager is going to pop up. And then, yeah, whichever one that. Now, this is what I was talking right here under Layout, Preserve Layout from Designer. You don't want it to do this. Yeah. And it actually doesn't like it because I've already made it in the format. But just keep it like that, so then that way you know exactly the way that you made it. We don't want Print Manager to do anything beyond that. Okay. Now you can also do these things like color. I don't like using these color. I know everybody loves to put this to vivid and put this, the saturation up to 2 or something like that. My only problem with that is that you don't know what the color exactly is going to look like, and you can do that from Photoshop. And I'll show you that right now. So I'm not actually going to print this, but I do leave it like this because I want to be able to see the colors that I have. So let's say that I wanted to make these more vibrant or increase the saturation or something like that. So the easiest thing is so if you come down over here and I select on my little layers panel, I select whatever image. Now, if you look down right here, there's like this circle that's like half filled in, and it's called an adjustment layer. If I click on that, I now have all these things I can change. And if I click on vibrance, now you see this thing pop up right here. And you can see I can change the vibrance and the saturation. So if I change this, see, now I can make all these colors, so I can change all these colors, and I can actually see exactly what I'm manipulating, versus in Print Manager, you don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But in here, I can see exactly how it's going to come out. And that's what I like. I like to be able to see what exactly is going to happen if I change these settings. So I can do that, and then I can, so I'm like, okay, I love those colors as it is, and you send that into Print Manager, and then, you don't set any, you set it to photographic and everything at 0 because you got the colors, you got the size, you got everything exactly how you wanted it to be. And you can even do other things. So down in here, you can change it to black and white. You can, there's all kinds of things in here. There's all, oops, clicked the wrong thing. You can change it to where it's all, oh, no, that's wrong. So there is that, okay? There are also other things that you can do. There are these things down over here called layer effects. So this little, like down right here, there's like this little FX button. If you click on that, you can see all these other things. You can add a drop shadow, and if you click on that, and it's a little, oh, it's because for some reason my drop shadow is white. And now you can see how there's now like this little drop shadow on there, and if you can see the difference. And it's aware of all the little edges. It's not just going to make this square like some of these other programs, like Affinity will, where it's like the whole image will be just the square will be. Nope. Like there's, it's aware of what is there. You can do a color overlay. Like if you wanted to make this all red for some reason, you can click on that. You can change it. Let's say you want to make it that. You can do that. But obviously I wouldn't want to do it this way because, and then you're changing this whole thing. Some other things that it works great for. So now that we got this, let's say I wanted to manipulate something in here to where, like, let's say like where it says axolotl questions. Let's say I wanted to make that black. Now clearly when I went into here and I did the layer effects, it changed the whole thing, but I don't want that. I just want this part to be black. So there are a couple ways of going by that. One is the absolutely painstaking way. So if you come down over here and you can hover over all of these and it'll tell you exactly what it does. Okay, so here's my paintbrush tool. And you see at the bottom right hand corner right here, it's really hard to see, but you can see it on most of the tools right here. There's a little like there's a little arrow, which means that if I hold it down, there's even more tools under there. Okay, so these are a group of categories. So this is your brush and pencil tools. Oops. This is your smudge and your sharpen. Here's like your burn and your dodge tools. Here's your text tools. So you have your horizontal and vertical type. So obviously one thing you can do is just go through here and try to somehow, paint over this, but that would take all day and that just wouldn't be worth it. All right. So there's something called the magic wand tool. And there's also the quick selection tool. So if I take my quick selection tool and I just kind of go over this, it automatically detected that that's what I wanted to select. And you can see these are called the marching ants in Photoshop. That is what is selected. So anything that are matching march are around, that is now what's selected. And then I can come down here and I can do the same thing. And you can see like right now before I let go of the mouse button that it didn't quite get everything. But as soon as I let go, it's going to realize what I was trying to do and it'll fix that. So watch what happens when I let go of the mouse button. Boom. Now it realized what I wanted. And that is one of the cool things. And now selecting that means that that's the only thing that I can manipulate. So anything I try to do outside of this is no longer going to work. So if I get my brush tool and I hit B for brush tool, and then I'm going to come up in here and I'm going to do this hard brush right here, okay? And then over here, here's my little paint palette right here. I click on that, and I'm going to go black because that's what I want. But if so I'm pressing down right now and I'm trying to color in right here, nothing's happening because I am outside of here. But if I go in here and I try to now see, and I can make this bigger. So if I come over here, I just increase this by this, or you can do the open bracket, like the brackets that are next to the P key. So you have like your left bracket and right bracket. Those will actually increase and decrease for your shortcuts. And I can just color over that. Now I can see now right here that it did miss some things when I was trying to select them. So I can go back to my quick select tool. I can say, hey, you missed that, you missed that, you missed that. And then, so now, here's another thing. Now if I look down here, because I was moving it around, it thought that I wanted to select this as well. So you can see little marching ants in here. Obviously I don't want to color any of that. So what I can do is I can hold on a Mac, it is the option button. On Windows it's the Alt button. And now you can see how it went from, see if I can get, you see like there's a plus button, and if I hold down the option / Alt key, it now turns into a minus, and that means I want to deselect. So I come in here and I say I don't want you to select that, and see it and so now I was able to remove that. And then I zoom back out, and this is another reason why I love the navigator panel, and I don't know why it's not standard layout in Photoshop, but it is. So I'm going to hit my B, and then I'm going to color over this. And now I can hit Command D, or on a Windows PC, Control D, and that's deselect. And now I can see that it had changed. I was able to manipulate all that, which is pretty cool, because now it also, like, you can see where it was, you know, scratched, or it had like that scratched up look and stuff like that. It was able to preserve that, you know, so I didn't have to worry about doing all that. Now, here's the hard part, where it's like, let's say for some reason you wanted to do something with this axolotl. It's like, this might be able to pick up on what I'm trying to do. We'll see. Let's see. No, not really. So there's a couple ways of going about that. So I'm going to hit Command D. Oops. And I'm going to come over here to my Magic Wands tool. Oops. Now, this, on an image like this, is kind of hit or miss, because Photoshop has to do a lot of guessing as to what you're trying to do. It's not like you can tell, hey, I want you to select this axolotl, but it can kind of do a pretty good job depending on the image. And I'll show you what I mean is this select subject feature. Now there's two. If I drop down over here, there's the device and there's the cloud. Obviously the cloud one is where it sends out the image to Adobe servers, and it does a lot more number crunching to figure out exactly what you're trying to do. And this is useful for trying to remove somebody, like you have somebody and you want to remove the background off of them, instead of like trying to erase and do all these other things, or like use a website like remove.bg. Like this does a lot better job of it. So, you know, you can click on this. So I select cloud and I select subject. Let's see what it selects. Oh, it selected the axolotl. So that was kind of cool. And you can see now the marching ants are now around it. Now, if I wanted to just have this guy show up now, I have two ways of doing that. I can either delete everything that's around this, or I can do something called a layer mask. And a layer mask just kind of hides everything that's not selected. So the easiest way so I have this all selected. I've got my little guy, I've got my thing over here selected. Down here in our little tools, there's like this square with a circle in it. and that is our layer mask. So if I click on that, boom, everything that wasn't selected is now been taken out. And but I have not erased anything. I have not done anything. So if I wanted to get that back, you can see right next to it now there's like this image where it's like black and this white. I can click on disable layer mask and everything's back. And then I can enable layer mask and everything's gone again. And I can even do this fine tuning, so you can paint in this thing, right, in this canvas right now. So I have this selected right now, or you can select that. And if I have the black color, black is exclude and white is include. So if I take my little brush right here and I've got it set to black right now, and I start painting over this, see, now it's starting to disappear because now it is black on this. And there is a way to see what exactly this is on the image. So the next to the P key, there's like the little forwards or the / button. So P, there's the brackets, and then there's that. If you click on that, it does this overlay to where you can see exactly where this was. And let's say it took out too much and I want to bring it back. So I can change this back to white. So there's these little arrow things, and that will cycle through the colors that you have on here. So I have my white, and I can start painting it back. And let's say, like, you know, I just wanted to have like this weird like halo, or, you know, whatever you wanted to do, whatever, if you wanted to fine tune exactly what was selected and what was not, then you can do that. And that's what layer masks are there for, is so that you can hide things but not actually edit the image beyond to where, you know, you can't do anything anymore. It's the whole point of a layer mask. There are other things that you can do with layer masks, but that is the basic point of it. And I'll show you actually, what I was talking about with selecting actual people. So I'm gonna open up, I have my picture of my daughter here, and I'm gonna open it up in Photoshop. And then this thing that just popped up right here is called the Camera Raw Editor, and I'll get into maybe to other sessions, but this is actually a really cool tool, but I'm not going to mess around with that right now. So there's a lot going on in this image where, you know, you got the grass, you've got, you know, all these things, you've got her hair, you've got all these, you know, it's apparently I try to use portrait mode on this to where it's got a sort of a blurred out background and stuff like that. So there's a lot for it to go on. But Photoshop is especially good at recognizing people. So if I do this, and I always do the cloud version because, you know, unless I don't have internet connection for whatever reason, and I click on the select subject, see, now it did a really good job of isolating her down even to like the fine hairs. So if I zoom in, it tried its best. You can see where it was trying to come in here and do it, but obviously, so you can see like right in here, it didn't really get it. In here, it didn't really get it, but it got a pretty good job for the most part. And then again, all I have to do is just hit that layer mask. And there you go. It, you know, now it's isolated and I can do whatever I want. Oh, yep. See, there's that. Oops. That's not what I meant to do. Like that. But then, you know, here's my little layer mask right here. I got my little brush tool. I change that to white. Using the bracket keys, I'll make this smaller. And then I'll just paint that back in. Oh, and that's why, because there was grass right there. So maybe, I don't know. So maybe I would just do this. And then I'll take this and lower it down, so then that way it's not visible. You know, oh, you can see up in here, you can see a little bit of the brick wall. So maybe, you know, you can take your black tool in here and then, you know, try to get it, you know, and do, you know, so you can spend hours trying to do this. And that's another thing, is if you're, one other thing that you should be aware of is how long this thing is going to take you to do. And you should charge your time appropriately. Like if I'm doing stuff like this and I'm doing this for a customer and I'm taking my time trying to like cut out the background and trying to get it perfect and stuff like that, I'm going to charge the customer for my time because, my time is valuable, and, I'm using, professional tools to do these things, stuff like that. So, there's that another way, or the old fashioned way when I started using Photoshop, like, why did it, that was weird. Back when I used Photoshop, 20 years ago, we didn't have the select subject tool. We had to like do the painstaking thing of going around and trying to manually select our subject. And if that's something you want to do, or maybe if you're using the select subject tool and it's just not getting it, like it just keeps selecting it wrong, or it's just not picking up, it's not reading your mind on what you want, well, then maybe you might have to do the old-fashioned way. And that is something done with the pen tool. Now, I'm not sure why they call this the pen tool, because in my eyes, a pen writes things, and that's not what a pen tool does in graphic design. Pen tool makes an outline of whatever you want, and then you can do whatever you want with that outline. And so, like, I'll start somewhere and I'll zoom in, and you create this little outline, and this is the old-fashioned way of doing this, and this can take a really long time. And if I'm doing something like this, then I will use a lot of these little, right now I'm just going to do a very rough outline because nobody wants to watch me do this for an hour's worth just to show what I'm doing. But so I'm just going to do this really terrible outline. I'm going to zoom out and do this. But if I'm doing this for a customer and I'm doing it this way, I'll take hours to do that. And then again, I will say like, hey, this took me forever to do. The normal rate for a graphic designer is in the area of $100 an hour. So obviously I'm not going to charge them $100 an hour, but I'm also not going to charge them $5. Something like this, I might charge $30 to do. And honestly, I think that I'm underselling myself with that, but times are hard right now. And so it's also just knowing your customer as well. Like if I'm doing it for a charity, then I probably won't charge anything, but. And then how much their budget is how much I'm also how much effort I'm willing to put into a job. And I will let the customer know that as well. All right. So now that I went all the way around, and now you can notice that once I did this and I went back to my original part, now this whole thing turned blue. And if I right click on this and I click on make selection, you can do a feathering, which I'm not going to explain into this, but it's basically just kind of making the edges softer. So, you can set it to 2 and you hit OK. And now you can see the marching ants. And now that you've got your, what you wanted selected, and then you do with it what you want. And that is the old way of selecting things. And in other programs, that's the only way that you can use it, like Inkscape and stuff like that. Don't really have a selection tool for these things. And that's again why I use Photoshop versus any other program, including Affinity, because these tools, like this select subject tool, where it does an amazing job of actually selecting exactly what I wanted and then I can just now remove that, you know. And again, it obviously did not do a perfect job. You can see right around the fingers and stuff like that. It didn't do a great job, but it did. It got me there. It got me close enough to where all I need to do is just a tiny bit of work, and then I'm done. Now let's say I have this, and then I wanted to add it to whatever, you know, so say I wanted to put this on a shirt, an 8.5 by 11. So I'll go in here and I'll create a new one, and then up in here you can see where all your other projects were. What I'll do is I'll come over here and I'll copy this, and I'll copy SVG. Oops, oh, nope, don't copy SVG. Well, it might actually work here. No, it's not gonna work here. Huh. All right, I'm just gonna click Command Copy because for some reason, and then there we go. But now you can see, even though this seemed big, once I copied it onto an 8.5 by 11, it really wasn't that big. So we can try scaling. And then again, you can see where it's horribly pixelated, but this is again where Photoshop shines, where if I hit enter, yep, see, it did a pretty good job of trying to scale that. You can see that it's a little bit, you know, there's a lot of detail loss in the face, some softness. You can try, so let me, and then doing this content aware scale, making sure that this is clicked, and you can let's see. No, that's not very good. But content aware scale works better with mostly like text, and just like if you're just moving it just a little bit, like you just need just a little bit of a nudge, you can do that. But yeah. All right, so that's where I'm going to end it, and hopefully based off of this, you can actually do some editing in Photoshop. And if there's any questions, please feel free to actually ask these. I do check the comments on these videos. So if you watch this at a later time, or you know, are going through Photoshop and you said, like, I wasn't very clear on something, and you're trying to do it, please feel free to ask. I am the admin of the Sawgrass Printers community group. I also have a Facebook page where I started to do my videos, called Pressing Matters. And then I also have my YouTube page, which is Pressing Matters as well. So you can also search me on there, and I will also respond to comments or anything on there as well. So I will leave it at that. And if you are on YouTube or Facebook, I just ask that you subscribe, because that helps me, that lets me know that what you found, that what I did was helpful. So with that, I'll say thank you, and I hope that helps.